tell this story before, but when my husband and I and my 2-year-old son arrived here on April 1st, April Fool's Day in 1992, it turned out the joke was kind of on us. We had agreed to stay in Alexandria for maybe 3 years or so. Well, we're coming up on 33 years. So you can tell by that. This is truly home, and it's just a great pleasure to be able to take part in events like this. So let's jump in right away. I'm going to introduce the candidates, get them to the stage, and then I'll quickly go over the ground rules for the event before we dive into opening statements. Our candidates for mayor are Leah Gaskins, and Amy Jackson. So a few words about the guidelines tonight. Each of the candidates will be getting a 2-minute opening statement. Their speaking order for both the openings and closings were decided by a drawing by an independent party last week. Each candidate will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer each question. Because we want to cover as much ground as possible, and because it's likely rebuttals won't be needed on all the questions, each candidate's been given 4 rebuttal cards. So those can be used when they feel the need to respond to something that another candidate has said, but they should be used only to rebut the specific topic being discussed, not to take a detour on other subjects. And those rebuttal responses will be limited to 1 minute. So we're going to have about 1 hour, 15 minutes for this debate. I'm going to try to get through as many questions as possible. The candidates will also get some closing statements at the end. Candidates, just another word about our time cues. You'll be getting a 30-second warning, a 15-second warning, and then you will hear the cowbell. So will you all. So I ask you all again, in the interest, please mind the timekeeper, or I will have to use my mom voice. And for the audience too, if you could please, I know it's hard to do, but please hold your applause till the end, till the candidates do their closing statements. And again, we'll be able to get through a lot more material that way, so I think that'll be great. So as I said, the order for the opening statements was determined in an earlier drawing, and we will begin hearing from Leah Gaskins.
Good evening, and thank you. Look, this is not just another election. We have to grow our commercial tax base. We are about to enter into an aggressive period of investments in our infrastructure, our schools, and our city facilities, and we're still navigating the impacts of the pandemic, which has changed the way we do everything in this city. But challenges only become opportunities with the right leadership. I am the only candidate who has a track record of working with and for our business community. On council, I have led efforts to streamline our processes, to expand outreach to minority businesses, and to expand our summer jobs program. I have also leveraged my background in public health, urban planning, and finance to make sure that we are moving policies that make Alexandria a better place to grow a business. I voted for zoning for housing because I believe we need additional options for our workforce. I put funds in the budget for early childhood and schools and teacher raises to help take stressors off of our working families. I put funds in for body-worn cameras because safe communities matter to businesses. And I stayed at the table during the arena conversation because I believe that our needs for economic development require us to consider every opportunity thoughtfully and intentionally. We need a mayor who understands the complexities of these issues and knows how to get stuff done. And I am that mayor. I am proud of the reputation I built as someone who is responsive, who works with their colleagues and gets stuff done for our businesses and for all of us. I'm proud to be endorsed by local leaders, regional leaders, and state ones as well. And I'm proud to be endorsed by unions because as your mayor, I care about having a workforce that is skilled, trained, and able to deliver on our projects and keep our businesses open. So my vision is a safer, more affordable, more accessible city. And I am bringing the new energy and the new leadership necessary to get that done. I thank you and I look forward to your questions.
I still argue better when I stand up. So, my name is Stephen Peterson. I am running for mayor. I have lived in Alexandria for over 30 years. My wife was born in the hospital here. I'm on the board here. I've been a businessman for over 30 years, and I know how to do big business, right? And when I started thinking about running for mayor, my friends were like, "What the heck are you doing?" So you know what? When I start to look at big business and running for mayor, right, we're dealing with large issues, And I think I can deal with those issues as we move forward. The city's not broke. This is a great city, but I think we've got a lot of things that we need to work on, whether it's affordable housing, which I don't like affordable housing. I think it's income-based, right? We've got an education issue that we need to deal with. We've only received 20% of our budget out of $350 million out of Richmond. I think we need to get a lot more out of that. So I am running on a non-political base. I am not a political guru, but I want to make sure that the citizens have a voice, and I don't think we have a voice right now. So I will be your voice as we move forward. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to say thank you to everybody who's here today, and of course thank you to our sponsors, thank you to our small business associations that are also here sponsoring tonight. I'm your vice mayor right now, Amy Jackson, and I am running for mayor. I grew up here. I went to ACPS and then graduated as a Titan. Went on to Virginia Tech for communication, 2 night school degrees, masters in education. One for teaching, curriculum instruction, the other for school leadership, education leadership, which is school administration. The things that we need to focus on and have been focusing on during the 6 years that I've been on council are fully funding our schools, public safety and our infrastructure, as well as affordable housing being a component of infrastructure. But our small businesses, as we've always known, are the support system, the backbone of our community. Think about the pandemic. When we were in the pandemic, Mary Wadlin of the Zebra said, you know what, we all have to support our businesses because we're home. We need to now go support them, go get curbside delivery. And she started a page that to this day, 22,000 people on that page that she started to support our businesses. And you saw our community supporting them through that action. So we need to keep the pace going. We need to make sure that our businesses still receive the grants that they need, still receive the support from the city, whether through public-private partnerships, whether through grant money, and of course using our Small Development Center and our AEDP to incentivize our businesses to come here, be strong, and stay forever and ever. Because growing up here, I have seen businesses come and go, and I'm happy to say that we are starting the uptrend of businesses staying now. So we'll talk more about that tonight. Thank you.
So many of the questions that I'll be asking tonight have been posed and submitted by members of the sponsoring groups and candidates. Just another reminder, feel free to jump in, and you don't necessarily wait for my cue. We're going to be circling through the candidates and letting everyone take turns answering the question for the first time. And Mr. Peterson, you will answer our first question first, followed by Ms. Jackson and Ms. Gaskins. So I know you've all heard a lot about this at the other debates and forums, but one of Alexandria's biggest challenges is the fact that depending on how you do the math, 82% of the tax base is generated by residential property taxes, and that imbalance with the commercial tax base is only widening. What do you think the city needs to do to grow its commercial tax base and to tackle this big challenge?
All right, so we are a city of 170,000 people, and we're about to go to 225,000 people, so we better get ready, right? And at this point, when I look at, everyone likes to talk about affordable housing, and I like to talk about income-based, right? But we've got to generate, we've only got certain areas where we can create tax base at this point, right? And I think that's the west side, and that's the arena area, right? So they're like two dumbbells, okay? So the west side is going to produce what it's doing, right? We all know what's going on with arena. We all know that I voted against that. But that's a great opportunity, right? So when I look at tax base, I look at areas where you can generate revenue. And that, to me, over the next 20 years, right? It was zoned for 8 million feet 10 years ago, right? We need to concentrate on areas such as that, right? Where we can create. If anybody ever been to, the Majestic in Fairfax County? That's the type of development I'm talking about. We don't need intense development like 20,000 people come in 350 days a year. We need sensible development over the next 20 years in the west, in Potomac Yards, where we can have bowling alleys. And she has talked about that, but where we are dealing with mixed use, which not is so intense, right? Maybe we have a
Time.
Okay, so it's about commercial tax. I'm sorry, the rambling is.
So the question is,
Yes,
the
please.
balance
Thank you for
between, the balance is growing. What do you do to bolster the commercial tax base?
Thank you. Okay, so to bolster the commercial tax base, remember it's not just about Potomac Yard and No Arena coming. We also have Eisenhower Valley. We also have, everywhere around metro stations. Those need to see density. They do. They should have had density to begin with because that's where people travel from. They're taking the transportation, the metro. But also Landmark Mall. Landmark Mall was supposed to be developed for the last 25 years. These huge parcels of land, the 3 around our city, are supposed to be developed, are supposed to bring mixed use. But also we need to bring in restaurants, entertainment, family-centric venues, because, we are a city that also wants to raise our families here, and there isn't an opportunity to really go and spend money in Alexandria at bowling alleys. We don't have any. We have one movie theater. We have a couple of Get Airs. We don't have, thank goodness, Continues Arcade is coming in the fall. But things like that generate money, but also provide entertainment for our youth. So those are some examples that I have. Thank you.
So I think it's no secret that the imbalance is real and it is growing and it's not sustainable. I think there are 3 things we need to do. First and foremost, we need a citywide economic development strategy that goes from Potomac Yard to Landmark to everything in between. We need to be very clear about what it is we want to see so that we can be proactive in going out and attracting the catalysts and the high growth industries that are going to create jobs and other commercial revenue for us. Second, it's not just all about the big fish, it is also about our small businesses. And we need an intentional strategy where we look at our permitting, we look at our practices, we look at how we can streamline and be more efficient to keep our businesses open and keep them staying open. And third, we need to look at and have a serious conversation about what are the tools we're willing to use as a community. The reality is, major developments and successful projects across our region, from Mosaic District to the new West Falls Church development, all of those have required some city engagement in some way. So we have to talk about what are the tools we're willing to put on the table, how are we willing to use those, and what are the principles we're going to engage in as we enter this work. I will tell you it's not going to happen overnight, but in my administration, it's going to be one of the first things we start with, beginning with an economic development summit so that we are clear and we have an action plan and can execute.
If you could, please hold your applause. It really takes up a lot of time. If you could just wait till the end, I'd appreciate it. Before I ask about the future of Potomac Yard, I do want to take a quick look back and give each of you a chance to share your thinking about what happened there with the arena proposal. And I do have a slightly different version of the question for each of you. And Ms. Jackson, I'm going to start with you. You were in that enthusiastic crowd back in December when the arena deal was announced, but later said you would oppose the deal. Why did you change your mind?
So I appreciate the question. So I honestly, looking at the framework agreement, we had proprietary materials that, of course, we were all excited. We were looking for that pie-in-the-sky answer to diversify our tax base. My campaign came out and did 2 surveys, actually, to take temperature of our citizens. With that, I was also talking with a lot of economists here in the city and hearing that the numbers just weren't adding up, not for our city, not for the Commonwealth, and it was too great a risk to take. So that's where we had to bring in the public. We had to take the framework agreement to everyone, which is what everyone saw on December 13th. And we were very excited, but then for the next 4 to 6 weeks, that's when all the homework was being done, the due diligence to see, okay, could this be a viable option in our community to have this arena? And the answer was no. So as soon as we knew that answer, I came out and I said I was against it, and that was about mid-March. Thank you.
Ms. Gaskins, you expressed interest in the concept, but said you reserved judgment, and as more information emerged, you started to identify some problems that you had concerns with. Explain the evolution of your thinking.
the approach that I had to our arena conversation is the same way that I approach everything that comes before us as a city. I believe that it's important to hear the opportunity, to do your due diligence, to meet with our community and ask questions. As I engage in these conversations, what I heard from many of you is that I'm not sure what to think. I still want to know what is possible and what's actually being presented. I heard questions about, are we going to get additional revenue for transportation? Are there going to be union jobs? Are we actually going to have community benefits for our small businesses? Are we going to see new investments to make sure that we mitigate the impacts to our surrounding neighborhoods? And first and foremost, are we going to make sure that this is not going to be detrimental to our AAA bond rating? And so I stayed at the table because I wanted to fight and get answers for each of you. I believe that it was the least they could do to make sure that Richmond was responding to our questions, that Monumental and anybody else who wants to do business in Alexandria is responding to our concerns. In the end, we got a bunch of pretty pictures and frameworks, but we never got an actual deal. I didn't see term sheets, I didn't see things for us to really decide if this was going to deliver those things and bring those new investments. And so that's why in the end, I said it was time to move on and begin to look at the future, and that's how I approach any major decision that comes before us.
Mr. Peterson, you had said that the failed plan would have been a nightmare for city residents. In your view, how should future proposals for the property be navigated differently by the mayor and council?
Well, so I get like to labeled as a real estate developer, right? And there's good developers and there's bad developers. And there's good development and bad development, right? And from day one, I said that this was an inappropriate use for suburban locations, right? And I will say that until the end, right? I had lunch with Andrew McDonald, who headed up against the coalition for this, and he thanked me for supporting his position, because you cannot take 20,000 people, 350 days a year, like a fire hose, and bring it into a suburban location, right? Forget the crime, forget the parking, all that. It's just not the appropriate use. It needs to stay in Washington, D.C. Now, it's a phenomenal location for great development, all right? And it will see its time. It's just not the appropriate use for the arena, right? So, and like I've said, we've got two opportunities in this city to develop, and it's the west side, and it's the arena area. So we have to look for the next 30 years at what we're going to do with that. And like I've said, it needs to be less intense development. It's not going to be the 8 million feet of commercial development. The pandemic changed the world, right? So we now have to think in a different way, because when you look at large-scale development, it changes every 5 and 10 years, right? So we've got 8 million feet to look at.
Ms. Gaskins, you'll be next first to answer the next question. So, arena deal is the rearview mirror, but that development of Potomac Yard is going to be crucial to the city's future, to its vitality. We've heard JBG Smith talk about tech opportunities. We've heard others say that it still is a good site for an entertainment district. Understanding that the mayor and council don't get to originate the next project proposal, what type of development do you envision there? What do you think would be the best fit?
I think one of the great things about the last several months is that we have heard from so many of our residents what they want to see. And I think the theme continues to be retail, restaurants, entertainment, and open space. And so the work before us and what I want to see and bring to life is making sure that we're identifying the right catalysts and partners and the things that we need to do from a city in order to incentivize and bring that type of project here. I think the other important thing for all of us to realize is economic development does not happen in a vacuum. It requires partnerships. It requires the ability to engage with other stakeholders. That's another benefit of why I stand at the table, because I don't want anyone to ever think that Alexandria is not a good place to do business or that we cannot get things done. And so as your mayor, I will be working with you to engage in conversations, bring together diverse groups who may disagree or have different ideas for what the entertainment use should look like, what the open space should feel like, or the restaurants and retail that we'll have there. But I am also bringing a record and a track record of getting stuff done and a background in urban planning so that we can really think about, it's not just Potomac Yards, but it's also how that fits into the overall fabric of Alexandria.
Mr. Peterson? I'm sorry, Ms. Jackson.
Well, I've been saying all along that our entertainment district, it is supposed to be an innovation district. Virginia Tech was built first. It wasn't supposed to be, but that's because of the pandemic. So as a land-grant university, they were able to secure funds and order their supplies prior to COVID really taking shape. And then JBG Smith was not able to secure the financing, or else this would have been flip-flopped, and we would have been talking about something completely different. But as we're building up around the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus, we need to make it innovative. We need to make it vibrant. We need to make it a unique neighborhood like the rest of our unique neighborhoods that build this fabric of Alexandria. I believe that when we are looking at this, of course, we have heard a lot of input now from the citizens. This should have been a transparent process all along, and mea culpa for that, and I think all of us probably feel that way. This is where you should be in on the ground floor, but with proprietary information, we just can't do that. So moving forward, the things that we need there, the things that, of course, Virginia Tech will be a partner there. They will bring their own innovation there. We will have the school system be a partner there. They are already doing K through 12, pre-K through 12 programs with Virginia Tech. So those are the types of things that will already go into play, as well as our restaurants, our entertainment, our businesses. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson. No, well, you're going to answer you haven't had a chance to answer the question, so you may do that.
As one of the developers at National Harbor, right? When you look at National Harbor, it's one of the national successes, right? And my father, we threw out 100 plans, and there's one of the land planners here named Peter Crowley. Well, we threw out the plans because everything changes when you're dealing in large-scale development, right? So what we thought was going to be there 10 years ago is not going to be here. And what we think is going to be there in 5 years is not going to be there. But we need smart, responsible development. The arena wasn't that, but it's going to become a great place. We're 5 miles from the nation's capital of the world, right? That's going to be a great place, but we need to think about it in a smart growth standpoint.
Again, it's my apology. I jumbled the order last time, so I'm going to get back on track with this next one. Mr. Peterson, you will be first to answer this question. For years now, the council has wrestled with the idea of creating a business improvement district in Old Town. That could pave the way for bids in other areas, but there's been a real lack of responsiveness on the part of some of the property owners. Recently, the guidelines were revised. Why isn't this working in your view? What needs to be done about it? And do you think the recent tweaks will make a difference? Mr. Peterson, you're first.
Please repeat the question.
Okay, I will. As you know, for years now, the council has wrestled with the idea of creating a business improvement district in Old Town, which could pave the way for bids in other parts. So there's been, though, a lack of responsiveness on the part of some of the property owners. There was just a change in the guidelines to try to improve that. But why isn't it working, and what needs to be done to get more of these businesses to come on board?
Right. When I think of bid, right, it's a business in the district, right? I think that you cannot allow the larger establishments, like the restaurants, to control this issue, right? So if you've got 100 different restaurants or businesses, and they want this tax through, and if the smaller businesses don't address the issue, I think that they shouldn't be able to just sit there and say, well, that they're not being addressed. So there are hundreds of business districts throughout the country, right? And I think that's great to be able to market that, but I just don't think the smaller businesses are represented enough within the system that is in place right now.
So council just tweaked this the other day. We have a problem. The problem is we have very engaged businesses that are saying, yes, sign me up, we want help, we want beautification, we want it all. And then we have some owners of buildings, of the businesses that aren't even here, aren't being engaged, could care less, and just don't want another tax or another fee. So we have to find this balance, and I think this is what the tweaking was that we were doing last time. Instead of everybody voting, which is what it was, and we needed 60% or thereabouts, we have gone back and said, start all over, and let's get the show on the road with having everybody get a letter again, And the people that vote, vote, and 60% of those approvals will then meet the guidelines to go forward. I say all of this because the city it does not have the money to do everything. This is where the needs versus wants list comes in. We want a beautiful old town. We want beautiful, unique neighborhoods everywhere. Delray, Carlisle, we want it all. But we can't have it all and have the city pay for all of it. So what needs to happen are these bids, and we have to do them thoughtfully, considering every mind, and everyone out there that wants to have input into this, and have a completely transparent process. Thank you.
As an urban planner, I think one of the things I understand is the power of placemaking and the role that structures like bids can play to help us activate spaces and draw customers into our businesses. I think we've seen successes, whether you look at DC or Roslyn or other places around the region, where bids have been a really integral part of keeping those businesses open and activating new ideas within those communities. At the same time, I understand some of the negatives and the concerns about a tax increase. But this is not something that should be driven by each of us or anyone on the council. This has to be driven by our businesses. And I think what is so important about the recent tweet is it's an opportunity for a final time for us to go back to the businesses and hear yes or no. Is this something you want and something you feel could be valuable to us? So I'm optimistic, first and foremost, because it's another way and another tool for us to hear back from our businesses what they need from us, because at the end of the day, that's the only way we can respond to their needs and make sure that we are delivering the community and the resources and the supports they need to be able to thrive in our city.
Ms. Jackson, you're up first on our next question. You know, even as parts of Old Town thrive, and I'm thinking about the waterfront, other areas stand out for a concentration of empty storefronts right now. How concerned are you about the optics of that, especially with visitors, and how do you envision those spaces being reoccupied and once again thriving?
Absolutely, thank you. So I am very concerned. We certainly don't want Alexandria looking like a ghost town. Old Town Alexandria is our hook. It's what Visit Alexandria markets to the rest of the world before they market the rest of our wonderful, unique neighborhoods, which they've just started promoting in the last year or two. We need to go out there and find businesses to come in and want to have storefronts. This was honestly a concern of mine when we were dealing with food trucks the other night, and I said, you know, it goes back to the brick and mortar stores that have to actually pay the leases, pay the rents on those places, but the food trucks don't have to do that. So it's an imbalance there. So we need to use AEDP, we need to use the chamber, all our small business associations to mentor and help bring in the connections needed. We don't want chain stores, we don't. We want unique stores here. We've done Made in Alexandria, we've got, up and down the King Street corridor, we have different vibrant, unique stores that this is what attract the tourists. So this is what we need to continue to bring to Alexandria, and using our resources of our business centers and our small business associations will certainly do that, as well as just, you know, our thoughts for working families here and labor unions. Those will also help along with affordable housing.
I too share those concerns, but I also see the opportunity. You know, for me, I think this is why it's been so important, and I've been proud on council to advocate for programs like business incubators and business accelerators. Because the reality is, every business is not ready for a full storefront right now, but they need a space where they can get out there and start to market their product, have you experience the service that they're ready to offer, so that they can build that customer space and be able to eventually launch into a storefront of their own. I think we have great models, like we've seen the Old Town Business District elevate, where you have stores coming in almost in a pop-up fashion, and they're there for several weeks. We market the hell out of them, we promote them, and we get you out there so that then we can send them off to be able to hopefully be set up in better position to stay in business moving forward. And so as mayor, I am going to take this concern, take the challenge head on, and partner with our groups like AEDP, with our small business organizations, with Visit Alexandria, to really figure out how we expand some of these other models into some of the other vacancies we're seeing up and down King Street.
So no, it's a great question. It's a question about the empty storefronts in Old Town, the optics of that, and what you would do to get those buildings occupied and revitalized.
Well, the post-pandemic has changed the entire commercial world. Okay, but I've lived here for 30 years, and I love to walk up and down King Street, right? But what we have is the unique opportunity, right? Because we are a boutique city, and that's what I would like to cultivate over the next 20 years, right? Because the development we've got, because it's coming, right? They're talking about 60% of the country going to be living in cities, right? And they want to live in places like Old Town, right? So I'm not too worried about the small shops, right? When I say that, it's because we're not going to get the big box users. So I think that we need to cultivate that from the standpoint of just promoting the cultivation of what we are as a little boutique city 5 miles from the downtown, right? And that's what we need to cultivate over the next few years. Thank you.
Our next question goes to Ms. Gaskins first. You know, another concern is the larger commercial office space vacancies across Alexandria. What are your goals for filling that space, and would you try to put limits on conversions to residential, since that would just exacerbate the tax imbalance?
You know, as I've been having conversations with folks in our commercial real estate industry, one of the things they said is that it's easy for local elected officials to say, convert, convert, convert. But the reality is every building is not able to be converted, nor should it be. I think what I would want to do as mayor is really begin and engage in those conversations with each of you to understand where are the places where we still need to be strategic about keeping office space. What are the industry changes we're seeing about the ways in which offices are being used differently? You know, we're seeing co-working spaces. We're seeing businesses that come in and they gather their folks just for a small conference or a small set of meetings. And so they're thinking about how they use these spaces differently. And we need some data and information to figure out where those spaces should potentially remain in our city. Where the places where there are opportunities to do conversions, then let's explore those too. I think we should celebrate the fact that we have actually been a model in the country for this. I think we're leading nationally and regionally, but it's going to come back to making sure we have the right data and that we're working with our industry partners and we're working with our business leaders to really figure out how we're strategic so that we're not giving up conversions or we're giving up opportunities that could have been critical to attracting the other catalysts and the transformational development projects that we just talked about earlier and that we know we want to see across our community.
Mr. Peterson.
I think there's only so many opportunities where we can densify, because as I stated, right, growth is coming, and we have to get ready for it. But we have to do it in a smart growth situation, right? 301 North Fairfax, several months ago, was zoned in an inappropriate way, because zoning was not, they did not listen to what the adherences of the city ordinance said, right? They went, they took away the setbacks from 16 feet back to 5 feet, right? So if you're going to densify, then let them go up from 4 stories to 8 stories, right? But it was 48 units, and they only gave them 2 affordable units, right? That's not scratching the surface, right? If we're going to deal with affordable housing, and we're going to deal with densifying the city, because like I said, it's coming, then we have to do it in a smart growth situation where we can accommodate the next 20,000 units, because it's coming.
So we really have to get smart and creative about our commercial properties. They are supposed to be built, of course, for office space, and whatever that plan was initially has now fallen by the wayside. We have to be creative and retrofit it for what we need today and going forward. So not just residential units. We need to use those for schools. We need to use them for entertainment facilities. We need to use them for, that's you, Mr. Pearson. So we also have to use them for like a conference center. We would love to have a conference center, and I know that was one of the things at Potomac Yard. But you know, the PTO is pretty much vacant, and it's going to be a great place if we could retrofit that for a conference center with the hotels already built there, with the metro already there. We have to think outside the box, use what we've got, and do it in a way that helps us all in our community, honestly, and helps bring in the business, bring in the conferences, and have people spend their outside dollars here in Alexandria.
Mr. Breed, yes. Ms. Gaskins has a rebuttal. 1 minute.
I just wanted to respond to Mr. Peterson's comment that the city did not comply with its zoning ordinance when it comes to 301 North Fairfax. Because the reality is, a judge actually just ruled in the city's favor and found that we were in alignment and agreement with our zoning codes. I also want to say that this notion that, yes, we're getting only a small amount of affordable housing when we do certain conversions, that's one of the policies we sought to address in zoning for housing, making sure that we are now getting additional affordable housing that we would have under current conversion policy. I'd say lastly, if anyone wants to come in and change those policies, those are things we set as a city. And so you need a mayor who understands affordable development, is going to bring together our AHAC committee, our planning commission, our developers, and others to figure out what is the right type of policy that not only gets us more housing, but also makes sure that the project is still viable.
Mr. Peterson, your turn to answer first. This is kind of a two-part question. What do you believe are the challenges and opportunities for minority-owned businesses in accessing capital and funding? And what's your plan for how the city will help support minority-owned small business? Yeah, there are two questions here. So first of all, what do you see as both challenges and opportunities for minority-owned businesses in accessing capital and funding? Secondly, what's your plan for how the city will help minority small businesses?
All right, so one of the biggest things that I have been talking about over the last couple of months is that we are seen as a rich little city, right? And Richmond does not want to give Alexandria much money, okay? So I think that we've got to do a better job of getting our what's due to us, right? So it's about lobbying, right? So I think that we need to be lobbying for more money, whether it's education, whether it's for crime, right? Which is for affordable housing. When you're talking about going for, like I said, I don't like the word affordable housing. I like income-based. So I think that we've got to, when I look at affordable housing, I think that we've got to look at areas on the west side and say, you know what, developers, we're going to put a moratorium for the next 5 years, 10 years, where you cannot develop them, right? And we're going to put a moratorium on their tax assessments, right? Because that's where developers want to go, right? So their house 5 years ago was assessed at $205,000, and now it's at $4. That's where they're going to go after. So I think that we need to make sure that we identify those areas and protect those areas for the next 10 years.
Thank you. So when it comes to our minority-owned businesses, we did try to put through what was called a BIPOC plan. That, of course, the city was sued, and now we have that money still going to the minority businesses. A plan just started on May 28th. It goes through, I think, June 18th, and it is going through the Latino Economic Center, I believe, the LEC. So you can look that up. But the money is there to help with our minority-owned businesses. And of course, the city will continue to support and give resources how it can, whether it's mentorships, again, through our wonderful small business associations that are very helpful, and the chamber willing to set up time and expertise to teach and to share information. That being said, going forward, you know, we have some wonderful co-working spaces. ALX Community, Co-Own Creche, they both have, one loves to have dogs while you work, the other loves to have childcare while you work, and I think that's phenomenal. So, because we're coming into an age where, of course, women can't go back to work, especially as we saw during COVID, and so the resources need to be there to help the moms, or all parents, I should say, so that they can get back to work and get back to even the federal government so that we can continue to open Alexandria.
When we were working on the FY24 budget, the social responsibility group came to me and said, we need to do more for our minority businesses. And so I'm the one who put the funds in the budget for us to explore what types of programming we could do. I also said, before we spend one dime, we as a city need to meet with our minority businesses and hear directly from them. I can still remember that first meeting where we had over 33 businesses packed in the Cameron Cafe. And one of the things that was most disappointing is not one of those businesses had received a dime, not a grant or any other opportunity from our city. Some of them have been in business over 20 or 30 years. And so since being on council, I have continued to engage in those conversations. I put additional funds in the budget for a disparity study so that eventually we can do some targets for local hiring and contracting. I've also worked to help expand our outreach so that we are now doing outreach in different languages, and we also have staff whose job it is to go out into the community and go door to door to make sure that all businesses know about the opportunities available to them. I have worked with many of you in this room to help us figure out how to restructure and relaunch our grant program so that we are doing more for minority businesses. And as your mayor, I will continue to be just as committed to making sure that every business in our community knows the resources and the supports that are available to them.
Ms. Jackson, to start us off on this next one, another question about small business. I've rarely moderated a local government debate without hearing candidates talk about making it easier for small businesses to get permits. They talk about streamlining. I want each of you, though, to give me one specific example, of how something you'd support to accomplish that.
Well, absolutely. Well, our APEX system, which is our permitting system, is going through an overhaul right now. We have a dashboard that goes with that. So I would certainly support more resources and people to get that into a smoother transition for our businesses. In terms, I've worked with a lot of businesses, and that seems to be the same catch, whether it's for construction, whether it's for signage, it comes back to permitting. So I know we have an office now on the West End for it, so that has been opened. And so right now there are 2 places that you can go and get help with permitting. But I think there also needs to be more education around that with our businesses and our construction. The outreach needs to be there in order for people to know what the process is. So those would be some things I would support considering permitting.
That's a loaded question about. If you look at my blog, about 2 months ago, I was down putting a sign up in front of the Exxon station down on Delray Avenue, and I was talking to the owner, and he said, "I can't expand my store. I don't know how to do it." So I literally the next day went down and sat with the administrators, and they walked me through the process, all right? And I walked down and said, "Look, they've got a pretty good process here, right? He's got to do $500." All right, for the application. So they don't have a broken system, right? We just, whether there is a system where we need to put in, and when I talk about doing economic development, is there a fund where they can apply for, right? And maybe it's a loan back, okay? But letting them have the opportunity to become, a great proprietor in our small city. Thank you.
As I have been talking to our small businesses, one of the things I hear over and over that's most frustrating about our process is that you'll call, you know you got the right number, you think you're talking to the right person, and then you get one answer from planning and zoning, you get another answer from permitting, you get a different answer from code, and the only way you think you can figure it out is you gotta call Joe or Charlotte or somebody else who's navigated it 1,000 times to help get you to the right person. And that's a problem, because we know businesses and business owners do not have time to be calling 7 different people and trying to figure out just how to stay open. And so one of the things I'd like us to do as we reform and revamp our APEX process is I think there should be a clear way where our staff is responsible for documenting, here's who talked to who on what day, here's the answer that was provided, and so there's a track record and a way that we as a city can hold ourselves accountable for making sure that we have given you clear information, efficient information, and the information that you needed at the time when it was most relevant to your business.
Ms. Jackson, this question goes to you first. I'm not going to stay standing. As you know, redevelopment of the GenOn plan is taking longer to get through the entitlement process than expected. Consequently, costs are likely to mount, could change or endanger the project. If elected, what would you do to keep that project moving forward?
So when it comes to the redevelopment of the old power plant site, my understanding is the next steps are we still need to get through our approvals of our special use permits, we need a final site plan, as well as we need to get some of the permits and other approvals. And I think all of that happening, if that stays on track, the earliest we'd start to see construction of the different blocks is around 2026. I agree that is too long, and many, many things could change in between that. We have seen for other economic development projects, whether it's Landmark or even the National Science Foundation, that we've gotten creative in ways to accelerate those processes, making sure that we are considering some of the different DSUPs and approvals at the same time. So it's faster, it's clearer, and they're able to get shovels in the ground much faster. And so as mayor, I would be open to having those conversations to figure out where we've created delays, where are opportunities where we can get things before the council much clearer, and then how do we document and get those approvals in a very streamlined and efficient way.
Mr. Peterson?
So one of the reasons that I run, because I think that this administration has been run from the top down, right? And I intended right up from the bottom up, right? Because too much development has happened with not enough approvals from the Planning Commission, right? The Planning Commission has taken different situations and not looked at the situation and passed it back up to the council and to the mayor's office, right? And I think that there needs to be a much better job done on at that standpoint so that they are looking at all the issues. And I've got several examples, whether it's 301 North Fairfax, where the administration did not look at their own policies, or whether it's 101 Duke Street, where they did not look at their own policies. So we need to be looking at smart growth going forward, because that's what I think that we absolutely need moving forward.
So the Hillco plant. So, you know, process going fast is great if you can get it done that way. But remember, it is a power plant. It needs to go through the process of the abatement process to make sure that we are all safe and healthy, that nothing gets in our waterways, that it is environmentally friendly for this eco-city of ours, before we move on to the next step of actually building. So the process is there to make sure that everyone remains safe and secure going forward. I'm absolutely okay with the rest of the permitting process and the DSUPs and SUPs going forward in a very precise manner, but we also have to make sure the abatement process is just as precise to make sure that our waterways stay clean, that nothing is going in the Potomac, that nothing's going in the air, and that everything is traveled out of Alexandria safely on a route that needs to go that way. So I don't foresee any other issues. Yes, more plans have to come, but it's supposed to be a wonderful small area plan that everybody is welcome to that portion of the waterfront. It is open to all. It is not just whenever it's built that it's only for those people. So it will be its own unique neighborhood, and I look forward to that vibrancy.
I have another question from the Old Town North folks, and Mr. Peterson, you'll be first to answer this one. What actions would you take with the council to expedite the implementation of the Old Town North Arts and Cultural District? And what can be done to make it possible for arts groups to be able to afford those spaces that are envisioned for them?
Are you referring to the Torpedo Factory?
No, Old Town North, the revitalization in that area.
Well, when I look at an area like that we're talking about revitalization, right? I have to look at the totality of what we are looking to do, right? And at this point, when I look at that situation, I look at the Torpedo Factory and how we're going to potentially redevelop that, right? When I look at the Old Town North, right? I'm going back to the potential of doing a convention center. And when you talk about a convention center, don't think about New York City or Detroit or Chicago with 20,000. I'm talking about 5,000 people. So when I'm looking at that, I'm looking at a situation like where we can bring that type of development in to the city.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Yes, so what actions would you take working with the council to expedite the implementation of the Old Town North Arts and Cultural District? What can be done to make it possible for the arts groups that are supposed to be coming in to be able to afford those spaces that are envisioned? Because that's been a stumbling block.
Thank you. Yes, it has been. Car companies has been wonderful to work with, but we've also wanted Metro Stage as our anchor on the north end of this arts corridor that we're envisioning between the Torpedo Factory and farther north into North Old Town. We would love for that to happen. There has been a stumbling block, and honestly, if you think back, hindsight's 2020, probably talks were happening. I was not included in them at that time, but probably happening around the arena at that time a year ago when these stumbling blocks may have started. That would put a pause on Metro Stage as we were waiting for something else then to happen in that area, which would bring the same amount of entertainment and arts to our community. So now that that is not happening, this is what we should be doing going forward. Is if music and art is still taught in our schools, which it is, we should certainly be supporting arts on council, and I haven't really seen that happening a lot lately. So I would love to be helping our community with Metro Stage and other arts organizations like that in order to continue to bring that vibrancy to Alexandria.
So when it comes to Old Town North, I have been clear from the beginning that I think our vision as an arts and cultural destination is amazing and one of the most innovative in the region. I think the ideas we put forth for tools like the arts density bonus are really exciting, but I think it's time that we re-examine them because they're not all working. The idea of giving an arts organization an empty space sounds great, but what we are seeing is that it is much harder to bring those spaces to fruition when your expertise is cultivating amazing musical performances, not doing a build out from an empty shell. And so what I would want to do is really pull together, Notice and other advocates who helped put together those policies, along with the council and the planning commission, to really figure out what is the right way to restructure that type of incentive so that we're not just getting shell after shell after shell, but that we are actually starting to see some of these performance venues and art spaces come to life. If you go back and look at the discussion around the power plant, one of the things I asked over and over about was, what about the artist housing? What about the artist studios? What about the other things that were in the small area plan? And why are we not yet delivering on that? And I think we need another conversation about the financial tools, the incentives, and the roles that the city might be able to play to help bring those parts of the plan to life.
Ms. Jackson, we'll start this next question with you. As you know, the zoning for housing reform spurred enormous debate and discussion last year. If elected mayor, would you seek to make any changes or repeal any of the components that won approval?
So, it was a unanimous vote, 7-0, for the zoning for housing. However, prior to that 7-0 vote, I asked and made a motion for the component of single-family housing to be pulled from that. Councilman Chapman seconded that motion and then voted with me against it in order to pause single-family housing because, honestly, I thought personally people had not been educated enough. We had the same people showing up at the town halls and at the meetings for it. And we were hearing a lot from our emails and a lot from people saying, why am I finding out about it on a yard sign? So I wanted to put a pause on that as well as the parking reduction. But that went down, defeated the single family housing vote in a 5-2 defeat. But I worked on those other parts of that package since 2020, such as the office to residential conversion component. So would I try to drop, first you need 4 votes. I don't see that happening to pause it. I would not, there is a part 2 to this package, I would not implement or touch that, and we have 6 years to do that. So as mayor, I would not start part 2. Thank you.
Yes, zoning for housing was a unanimous vote by the council. I would not seek to repeal any piece of it. Instead, what I did on the council is I put forth the call for a creation of a dashboard, because I think before we make any next decision, we need to evaluate what we're seeing, not just from these 8 policies, but think about it. What we've done for our housing master plan is actually 13 different policies. We need to be measuring, where are we seeing permits being drawn? Where are these new buildings happening? What types of affordability levels are we getting? And are we actually moving forward with our goals of creating a more affordable, more accessible, and more housing availability and different options in communities? The second thing that I think is really important that I push for as part of our zoning for housing conversation is that we also have to be evaluating through our dashboard and other tools the impacts on our infrastructure, whether that's schools or stormwaters, and I think making sure that we have the data in one place, clear maps to be able to move us forward is critical. I'd also want to say that there is currently no phase 2. Phase 2 is whatever we could decide or want to be. At this time, before we have any other discussions, I think that's where the data comes in, and that's where I hope to lead as your next mayor to make sure that we are being thoughtful and intentional about the questions we're asking about our overall housing policy. We're getting ready to open up our housing master plan discussion, and so we're going to be in the next 1.5 to 2 years talking about every single one of these policies, their impacts, and what else is needed to truly be an affordable city.
Plain and simple, I think zoning for housing was politically motivated under the affordability auspice, and I don't think it has any place in the city of Alexandria. If you cannot invade a neighborhood with the fabric that has already been established for 10, 20, 50 years and bring in outside influences such as townhouses and duplexes or singleplexes, it's not. There's better ways to address affordable housing, but I do not think that bringing in politically motivated that under affordable housing. There's better ways to deal with affordable housing and not bring townhouses and other uses into single-family neighborhoods.
We will turn to the West End for just a minute. I just lost my order of speaking. Let's see, Ms. Jackson, you went first last time, so Ms. Gaskins, we'll flip back to you. Between road diets, the Landmark Mall project, Duke Street in Motion plan, the West End business owners are worried that their customers are going to be increasingly unwilling to fight traffic, and it's going to be a while before the Duke Street improvements take shape. What do you think the city can be doing in the meantime to mitigate some of that pain, and what would you say to those small businesses that are so concerned about losing customers?
So, I think many people in this room know I live on the West End, and many of these projects that you just named are right around where I live. It's the routes I take to get to and from my home, to the businesses I frequent, to my children's daycare. When I think about what we can do differently, and part of the reason why I'm running, is because I think we need to plan more holistically and connected. At the end of the day, every road connects to another road, every pipe connects to another pipe, and I think far too often we look just at traffic studies for project by project by project, and we're not thinking about how all of those projects come together. Something I've tried to advocate for on council, and something I will push even harder for on mayor, is I think we need like a West End coordinator who is looking at the implications of all of these different projects and being able to say, here's where construction is happening. Here's how we're communicating about when we're digging up this road. We know that's diverting people to another road, and that's additional traffic that impacts the ability to get in and out of our businesses. But somebody who has eyes on these projects, somebody who is aware of their delivery schedules, somebody who's working with the different implementation advisory groups, so that we're making sure that any disruptions that are happening are being mitigated, and actually calling and talking to our businesses to see in real time how these impacts are happening. Because at the end of the day, the goals that we have and the projects we're doing are supposed to make it easier for you to get to businesses, easier for you to walk around your community. And if we're not delivering that, then we've failed.
Mr. Peterson.
So we had this question last week at the Cameron Station debate. And all I can say at this point is this: we are an evolving city, right? And you can only expand so much horizontally, okay? So we cannot take lanes for vehicular way, right? Everyone wants to be green, and everyone wants to have bikes, and everyone wants to have more buses. But the reality is we are 93% vehicular, right? And I do not think that you can take the quality of life away from the expansion of what's happening in the West End. Because like I said, development's coming, and it has to go at the West End, and it has to go at the arena, right? And so we have to protect those areas, and you can't sit there and take away the vehicular lanes, or the quality of life is going to be to the point where people simply don't want to come and be there. So as much as people want to say that I'm not, that I'm against that, it has to be that way. We have to look at the percentage of people that are in vehicular cars versus in buses and other transit.
So I've been on council 6 years, and the very first year I was on council, we had Seminary Road upheaval because it was a road diet that no one, and of course we didn't see the pandemic coming, that no one would be on the roads anywhere for a good year at least. So I'm not for taking lanes away. However, I am for safety. So when we're looking at pedestrians and fatalities and intersections, then yes, we need to make sure that they are able to cross safely to our businesses and from our businesses. So when we're talking about roads and our businesses, I mean, I am not comfortable with Duke Street in motion. I've made that perfectly clear on council, because you are if you put a bus rapid transit right down the middle of Duke Street, when do the cars or the pedestrians get to the businesses? Will they see a decrease in those businesses? Most likely, yes. So we have to come up with a better plan. We are only 15.2 square miles. And growing up here, I know we had less traffic, but over time, people want to come and live in Alexandria. They want to do business in Alexandria. So we have to just make it safe, but we still need to be mobile. We need to be able to move around. And taking away car lanes is not the way to do it, but we're working on it. Thank you.
Ms. Essence has a rebuttal card ready to go.
I think this is why it's so important to have a mayor that is spending time in every part of our city and talking directly to our businesses. The idea for Duke Street in Motion, the West End Transitway, these other major projects that are happening on the West End are because with Landmark, we're about to get $1 billion investment in a hospital that's bringing tons of people. We have 2,000 units of housing approved just on that project. We have thousands of units approved through Landmark Overlook and Parkview and other things all around the street. Everyone cannot bring a car. A lot of people will. But if every other option is terrible, then our streets are going to be even worse and more congested than they are now. And so part of these investments are first and foremost giving the West End its due and making sure we get some of this major transportation projects and investment, but it's also about making sure that we're providing other options from the bus to the bikes to pedestrians so that we can move about our city and that these major economic projects don't become an additional burden for us, but actually the transformative projects we've hoped for over the past 20 years.
Ms. Jackson, you want to respond? You have 1 minute.
Yes, thank you. So when we're also talking about our businesses, those businesses serve our families and our youth. So if you are trying to drive one child to a basketball practice or a dance practice, and then you have to get across town to drive the other child to Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, you have a problem if we can't get anywhere for 30 minutes across town. So this is why we do need to not widen the roads, but keep the roads at least in the lanes that we have, while we are providing safety for our pedestrians, for our bicycles, and for our cars. But we need to be able to move around in order to frequent the businesses that have been in business. Chris Collins Dance Studio, 46 years. They're down on Eisenhower. It takes 30 minutes to go down Van Dorn at 5 p.m. to get a child to practice. So these are the things that families are dealing with, trying to move their children around for a great childhood here in Alexandria.
We have a Delray question. Mr. Peterson, we'll start with you on this one. In May of 2023, the Delray neighborhood was designated as one of the most endangered historical sites in Virginia. How important do you think it is to maintain Delray's historic integrity, and what would you support to preserve and enhance it?
Old Town was originated in 1749, and Delray followed right behind it. So when you look at the possibilities of what we're dealing with Old Town, Delray's right behind it, right? So you don't want to call it the stepchild, but it needs to have the same rights that are obliged to Old Town. So I think that we have to do everything we have. I think they should follow the same rules as Old Town, right? But that's the answer, because I've seen what they're doing as far as allowing, whether it's the single family houses being torn down and going up, right? You have to protect the historic nature of what we're trying to preserve since 1749, and that's what I want to be able to do, and that's not what's happening right now, right? And Delray needs to follow suit.
So I believe in historic preservation. I'm a history teacher, so I have to. But also just growing up here, I mean, we do. That history pulls our tourism. It brings the outside dollars. Through Visit Alexandria, they've been able to make that happen and provide a way to market our history. Delray is, we need to make modifications to bring that history in as well. Just a few weeks ago, the Delray Home and Garden Tour was going on. Some of those homes, of course, were historic and beautiful. And so the modifications need to happen to roll those into the historic preservation.
Our historic character is part of what makes us unique and special. It matters to our residents, it matters to probably every one of us in this room, and it matters to our businesses. And I think this is why it's important to have a planner as our mayor, somebody who understands the different tools that might be available to us. Because on the one hand, you could do a BAR like we have in Old Town or in Parker Gray. On the other hand, there might be other things like a development overlay or tools like a pattern book or a style guide. But I think these are things that have to be driven by the Delray community, because there are a lot of people who, they love the history, but they also love the fact that they've gotten to paint their door a different color, or they've put up different shutters, or there's things that make it unique and vibrant that are a part of what lets you know you are in Delray and you are not anywhere else in the city. And so what I'm committed to is engaging in those conversations with the businesses up and down the avenue, meeting with the Delray Citizens Association, meeting with the Delray Business Association, and also meeting with many of you who just love to go and visit Delray to really figure out what is the right mix of tools and how could we begin to pilot or move forward a set of tools that responds in a way that allows us to invest in our historic character, but also do some of the new investments that are necessary related to our infrastructure or other businesses coming into the community.
Ms. Jackson, we'll begin with you for this question. As you know, gun violence and robberies in particular continue to be a big concern in Alexandria. Yet our police department has been well behind other Northern Virginia law enforcement agencies in its ability to harness technology to solve and even deter crime. Only in the last year have they been able to deploy the mobile surveillance cameras. They are hoping now to create a registry for private security cameras. They want more license plate readers. How satisfied are you with the tools the police department has, or does more need to be done?
More needs to be done. So I'm getting there to satisfaction. And we've worked a long time. I've been on council 6 years. The very first thing I did was meet with Chief Mike Brown of the police department and say, is there a proposal for body-worn cameras? Oh no, we're working on it. Okay, so we just implemented that program, not a year and a half ago. So these are the things they take, you can't turn on a dime, it's like the Titanic. However, that being said, public safety is always the #1 priority. Just that, the school teacher and administrator and me, in a school community, it wasn't the curriculum that was first and foremost in my mind. It was always the safety and security of the kids in the school community. Same with the city at large. If we don't have public safety that can meet the needs of the density of people that are here, we're not going to do very well. We know right now, even our middle schoolers, because they don't have the after-school programs or the sports to go into, they are the highest tick in our crime concerning our youth. So we need to find something for them to do. But we also have collective bargaining. I was one of the first ones on council, of course, to bring that forward, our collective bargaining unit. And of course, that will attract and retain more officers and make our force stronger and more secure for our city.
Yeah, Ms. Gaskins.
When I first got elected to the council, I started having meetings with our public safety officials, from our chief all the way to officers in our union. I started going on ride-alongs. And I was appalled to hear that they had been asking for body-worn cameras for over a decade. And so the first budget amendment that I did on council was actually putting in the funds for body-worn cameras so that our officers have the technology they needed to be able to respond and to be able to be transparent and accountable with us as a community. I think that in terms of moving forward, we need a comprehensive approach. This is where my background in public health comes in. I think we need to be looking at how do we shrink some of our beat structures, because in some places they're so big that the zones our officers cover, it prevents them from being able to be out and engaging with and being active in community policing. I think I'm also really excited about some of the things we're doing around preventing crime in the first place. The reality is much of the uptick we're seeing is being committed by juveniles. And so that's why I've put in funding for programs related to youth jobs, put in programs for mentorships and other things with our police department so that we're trying to create another path forward. And also, I'm excited that I signed on to and supported our collective bargaining agreement because, as was stated, this doesn't work if we don't have officers. And so making sure that we are recruiting them, training them, and investing in their future with Alexandria, and that Alexandria is the workplace of choice for them, is critical to a comprehensive public safety response.
So when I was president of a large company, right, my job was to hire the right people and get the heck out of their way and let them do their jobs, right? So when you ask me that question, I think it's a loaded question, right? I'm not in the police force, right? But my job is to ask, what do you need, right? And go and talk with the police officer. What do you need, right? And then give them that situation. What do they have? What are they dealing with on a day-to-day basis? Because it's just not fair to ask the council or the mayor what they need. It's to ask the police force, what do they need? And then give them what they need moving forward. Now, what we're dealing with right now with crime in this area, crime up 30% and car thefts up 58%, that's unacceptable, right? We got to find the hot spots in this area, just like, I read an article a couple of weeks ago in Chicago. Crime is up 60%, and it's based on 1 to 2% of people committing the crimes. Let's go find the hot spots, but talk to the police officers. They're the ones in there day to day. It's not up to the councilman or the mayor. Talk to the people that are on duty day to day.
We have come to the time for closing statements, and if your stomach is grumbling like mine is, you're probably glad that I'm saying that. And I want to thank you, audience, for following the guidelines to restraining applause. So at this point, after each candidate does their closing statement, I do welcome you to applaud. And our closing statements are a minute and a half. And Amy Jackson, you are up first.
Thank you. Well, again, I want to thank Julie Carey. I want to thank our sponsors, NVAR, and of course, WEBA, well, I'm going to not name them all, so I better just say to our small business associations and, of course, the Chamber of Commerce for having us tonight. I just want to say the city continues to work in partnership with not only these wonderful organizations, but, of course, all of you. This is what we are here for, is to hear you and to hear your ideas and to bring them to fruition. It should not be our agenda up there. It should be our collective vision as we move forward. And as your mayor, I would hope to do that for you. So again, I'm Amy Jackson, and I'd appreciate your vote between now and Election Day on June 18th. And you can find more information about me at my website, www.amyjacksonva.com. Thank you very much.
Ms. Gaskins is next under the drawing. Yeah, Ms. Gaskins will go next.
I want to thank the Chamber for hosting tonight's debate and all of you for being here with us. As I said when we started, I am the only candidate with a track record of working with and for our businesses. My engagement with our Chamber and many of you began when I was first recognized as a 40 under 40 honoree because of the work I had been doing serving our community. It grew when I joined the Chamber as a business owner, when I launched my own consulting business and started serving on our government relations committee so that I could help you put together our legislative agenda and advocate for policies that matter for businesses. And it's only continued to grow through my work on council as I reach out to each of you to understand what we can do better. And that commitment will not change. As your mayor, you can expect a leader who will always respond, who will continue to reach out, and who will make sure that we are pushing forth policies that matter to your business, but also make sure that we are creating a city that is a better place to live, work, and grow business. And so I thank you again for your time. I hope to earn your consideration for mayor in the Democratic primary. You can learn more about my campaign on my website at www.aaliyahforalexandria.com. Thank you.
I've lived in Alexandria for over 30 years. I have 7 kids, triplets and twins, and thank God 6 of the 7 have left the nest. I was out in Colorado over the weekend and getting one of them married. I've been in business for 30 years. I'm a businessman, and I've been on lots of boards around the country. I know my way around a business. I know my way around the boardroom, and I know how to deal with billion-dollar issues and the large issues. And that's why I decided to run. When I heard that, Wilson wasn't running, I said, you know what, this is an opportunity for new visions, new ideas, right? And new opportunities for the city. because this city has not been represented by the council or the mayor, right? It's been run from top down, and I intend to run it from the bottom up, right? And I'm not a career politician, right? And if they want to be politicians for the rest of their life, that's fine. I want to do this for 3 to 6 years, and then I want to move on, right? I'm 60 years old, and I got a lot of other things I want to do, but I want to make a cultural change in this city for the next 3 to 6 years, and I want to just shake things up. So I would appreciate your vote as we move forward. Thank you.
So you all have been a wonderful